Welcome to the Better Call Saul edition of the Serious TV Drama Podcast with Scot and Dan. I'm Scott, and with me as always, the chicken dinner to my winner, it's Dan. Dan.
How am I doing tonight, Scott? Good. How are you doing, Scott?
I hate the whole "how am I doing" thing. It's always so funny.
Well, I hate it too, but I expect it, so I was waiting for it. I didn't want to interrupt you, and I failed. So
what is this podcast number?
Another
this
professional episode 222. Deuces all the way.
So 222 podcasts, and we still can't manage to do it a decent sounding opening 2 minutes ever. And it's both of us. You know what? It's the listeners. No, it's not.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I know some of the listeners. Pretty much are. Never mind.
Speaking of listeners who are also podcasters now, we've got a couple guests tonight. Would you like to introduce one of them?
Yes. I think I had something clever to say about her, but I forgot. So, welcome to the podcast again, Jamie.
Hey, thanks.
And joining Jamie is once again our resident legal eagle. It's Brian. Hey, Brian.
Hey, guys. And Jamie.
Hey.
Hello.
You guys get to meet each other for the first time. No, it's
not. Yeah, I think we're gonna branch off and make the JJ and Bra Bra podcast.
Yep. Done deal.
They're going to be the Frasier to our Cheers, Dan, but I would do.
Yeah. Well, I probably would like you guys more than I like us, so it would make sense. It's kind of hard to dislike Cheers for me, though. I mean, not like it.
But you're kind of setting the bar. You're setting the bar pretty low, saying you like them better than us. We're two of the most self-hating podcasters around. Just about. We just hate everybody more, I think. Anyway, getting us back on track to why we're here and be slightly more professional. We, of course, are here to be talking about the season finale of Better Call Saul. I totally forgot what I was about to say now. This is what happens when I, again, don't script things for myself ahead of time.
This is where you ask people to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes.
Yeah, because look at that. Wow. He does gibberish in the most professional manner possible. Speaking of gibberish, I was probably reduced to gibberish by the time the finale was over because, quick story before we start, I had a guest over to watch the finale, and we delayed it till close to midnight because I was forcing myself to watch a rather unfortunate baseball game that evening. But we decided, after we were talking about what we were anticipating for the finale, and we decided to try to do a drinking game during the finale. And so we just kept coming up with this just random stupid stuff to do a shot to, it was stuff like every time a German dies, do a shot. Every time, it was like several things, including if anything that we predicted of a reasonable or major nature came to pass, whatever. So I'll probably be talking about a couple of those things during the course of the podcast, mainly because in one instance we disagreed about something. We had separate, totally different predictions about a certain character and how something was going to go. And the fact that the show actually pulled off an opportunity for us both to be right, which means we had to do more shots, was really something amazing. But we'll get to that in a little bit. So enough of my preamble ramble. Let's dive into the season 4 finale of Better Call Saul. Now, the finale was titled Winner. It was directed by Adam Bernstein, who's a TV vet, who has several episodes of everything from Oz to Scrubs to Breaking Bad on his really impressive CV there. And it was co-written by the show co-creator Peter Gould, along with Thomas Schnauz, my favorite name of all the Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul people. Now, this was, if it wasn't the longest, it was certainly one of the longest Better Call Saul episodes. I think we can pretty neatly cut it in half, more or less, because it really comes down to the two central characters that the show has had us following before Better Call Saul had even aired. Mike and Jimmy. And
Also, it's the longest episode of Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul.
Is it long? Is it longer than Breaking Bad? Wasn't the finale?
Yep.
Long?
No, the finale wasn't as long as this even.
Really? Oh, okay. See, look at you, chock full of facts. Nice. And you could even make a case that maybe, say, for one character / storyline, the show as a whole, at least as far as those two are concerned, this episode was not only an ominous milestone for each of them, and in many ways the series could have ended here, as it moved both characters so much closer, if not entirely, to the versions that we're already familiar with them on Breaking Bad. So, with that said, let's start with the Mike half. I'm going to spare the audience any endless recapping on my part, because I think we just want to talk about it. So let's just break it into like 3 sections. The first one being the whole setup is this whole cat and mouse game between Mike and Lalo while Mike is in pursuit of Werner. I wanted to hear what you guys had to say about it, and the highlights or lowlights, if there are any. I don't think there are any. So, Jamie, because I just want to pick you instead of Brian. Well, trust me, we'll hear enough from Brian during the course of this podcast. He's already upset that his favorite Breaking Bad character, Nacho, wasn't on it. So. Beat you to it that time. So, what were your thoughts on all the stuff between Mike and Lalo and the pursuit of Werner here?
Well, first of all, I got to say that, I mean, I know, Mike is a character played by an actor, but man, Mike can really act. Just like when he went into that transfer, that money transfer place, the travel wire, and he's like pleading his case about his missing brother-in-law, like he was so convincing. And then like later when Lalo pops in there, the dude's like, no. Like, I don't trust this guy at all. This old guy, I totally trusted enough to look at the security footage. But I think that was really fun, watching Mike be concerned about this make-believe brother-in-law who needs his diabetes medicine.
It was almost like Mike was, to a certain extent, kind of channeling Jimmy. Because that's the kind of shtick you can imagine Jimmy pulling. And actually has pulled a number of times. You're right. It was fun to see Mike kind of doing that, because that's not something we're accustomed to seeing.
No, I think he actually, he probably showed more emotion and had more of a conversation with another human being as this make-believe character he was portraying than he ever has that we've seen him as Mike.
Oh yeah, he totally gave his little fictional character more of a story, more backstory than he's almost ever given us, outside, yes. Outside of, my poor boy story. I won't mean to make fun of that episode, but you know what I mean. Oh, great. Now Jonathan Banks is going to come for me. Brian, what were some of your thoughts on it?
I really enjoyed it. I liked how Mike the whole time was trying to make it right, knowing what the stakes were, but seemed to be trying to make it right. And then I also liked that real quickly Lalo turned deadly. Mm-hmm. And I mean, what about that, like, where he just jumps through the ceiling down on that guy and goes through the ceiling panels, and then they cut to it. You don't see him dispose of the poor transfer guy, but you just see like the lower half of his body laying outside the screen. So, Lalo is kind of whimsical, but you saw like you really saw some of the first flashes of his true deadliness in this, which sort of is one of the things that I'm going to look forward to is the possible Mike Lalo cat and mouse game that it set up.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoyed it. I thought Jonathan Banks, he didn't want to involve collateral people and wanted to get this done, but as we've seen this season and before, it inevitably happened. So I really enjoyed it.
Dan?
Yeah, I was impressed with the entire sequence of events. I really liked how every time Mike ran into a dead end, he was resourceful enough, which isn't surprising, but to find a different way to continue to move ahead into his mission or to get away from Lalo or whatever he was doing, it worked. I just like to see competent people behaving in a competent fashion, so it was really cool. And I'm really digging the actor that plays Lalo too. I'm just gonna call him Tony Randall because I keep forgetting his last name, so I'm gonna call him Tony Randall the rest of the podcast forever. But he's just a really fun actor.
Okay, wait. You got to explain that to me. Why Tony Randall?
Because his first name is Tony, and that's the only thing I can think of when I try to remember his last name.
Okay, all right, I gotcha. All
But
right.
he really lights up the camera. He just pulls off that character really well to the point where I would, depending on how they decide to do things, I think a villain. He has a potential to be enough of a villain, I would say, where I could see the show lasting for a few more years, and it wouldn't, I could just see a few more years of storylines without it getting, lame at all, just based on the strength of the performance that I'm seeing here. Maybe I'm jumping down a little bit, but I'm just impressed. Very good job by Mr. Randall.
Yeah, that'll definitely be a factor in our post-episode conversation for sure. Getting to something that Brian had mentioned. Actually, I'm sorry, you had mentioned. It wasn't Brian. Brian, you screwed up.
Brian, I'm trying to take credit for my set.
One of the great parts about that whole sequence, the pursuit sequence and whatever, is what you were saying. It's Mike's ability to think on the fly. He's and how strategic he is, and one of the things we've seen both in Breaking Bad and throughout this series is how he comes up with things and how he designs little devices or contraptions or whatever. So the whole bit with the gum to get out of the parking lot was something I'm watching and I'm trying to figure out what he's doing. And it wasn't until when he made it flat, I was like going, wait a minute, what would that be for? And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, the ticket thing. Which is really funny because he was the guy who used to be a ticket taker himself at parking lots. So it's so weirdly appropriate somehow.
It's awesome too how they kind of were using this not in a super obvious way, but as a way of showing how both these two characters, which theoretically could end up being some kind of adversaries over the next couple of seasons or whatever they end up doing, but just seeing how watching both of them in their specific problem solving process. So They both end up looking, competent in their own way.
Right.
One of them more lethal and stuff, but it's just a really, really nice way to kind of show off both characters without needing any exposition or anything, whatever. Just really, really nicely done.
It's just seeing what they do. And the fact that they both arrive at the same, in one way or another, whether it be in person or via phone, they both end up at the same location in virtually the same time. Though through very different means, it's exactly what you're saying. The contrast in styles, and whether it be Mike's, because Mike's also dealing with trying to do this while trying to quote unquote save Warner as well, which you're going to get to in a second. But what was great about all of it, and hats off to the writers here, that it does finally come to that phone call. And him getting on the phone with him he knows without even hearing a word, he knows that it's Michael is on the phone, and I just love that. That's and right there is that just I think we've just seen the birth of these adversaries here, the Mike versus Lalo thing, which I thought was funny because previous to this, we were thinking, oh, it's Gus versus Lalo. But here it became more, these are guys with their feet on the ground who actually do the dirty work, even though we do know at some point in the future, Frame does his own dirty work.
Yeah. And it sets up a really nice possibilities for Nacho too, because Nacho, technically, kind of publicly it has to work, with and for Lalo. However, Mike specifically knows that Nacho poisoned Hector, so Mike has leverage over him. Gus has leverage over him. They both have, they both know what's going on. But Mike, for example, he was there when, he facilitated the deal with the Nacho getting pills and stuff in Price, didn't he? I think he was part of that situation. So he knows exactly what happened, and I'm sure Gus does too. But he has more hands-on specifics for it. So I can just assuming they can actually find a way to get Nacho into some of the episodes next season, I see the potential for some really complicated stuff going on there. And Michael Mando's proven in the short time we've seen him be able to play that he's really going to be, he has the chops to pull off that kind of stuff, because it's just going to be, it could be a really, really awesome total hot mess for us to witness with all these guys. That I just like how it's coming together like that.
Absolutely.
Exciting.
Yes. Did you just say guests?
I just think.
I'm with you. Yes. Yes, I have nothing in opposition to say about what you just said. I'm with you.
Excellent.
Hey, Brian, do you have a similarly long way of saying that you agree as well? No, I'm just kidding.
No, I was just going to ask if Dan remembers, since this is my only chance. I was going to ask if Dan remembers when Walter White published the kid in Breaking Bad. So
yes.
I totally
yeah.
Okay, so
because I said published instead of poison because I'm on crack apparently.
Oh, okay. I totally missed that. Maybe I wasn't listening. By the way, Brian. So one thing I've learned over the last couple months of watching TV, if you're working somewhere where someone from the cartel asks you for security footage, just give it to them. Because there's two different shows now that we've seen where they're refused and they end up dead. Just occurred to me just now.
Maybe ask your employer.
I don't want to say what the show is because I don't want to spoil that for other people.
I've watched that one episode. I've only seen one episode so far, but I have seen that.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Of that show that
I don't want to spoil.
Yeah, a show that isn't quite doesn't feel like it's top tier, but maybe it is, which is the most shitbird level statement imaginable.
Oh boy. So picking up on the situation with Mike and obviously the cat and mouse game with Lalo and the pursuit of Werner, what's overriding all this and what it culminates in is Mike trying to deal with Gus and trying to convince him that Werner is not going to be a problem until we get to the point where it's too late. I think that scene, specifically the final conversation between them, not just in terms of story, but also getting back to how good this is more about how good an actor Jonathan Banks is as opposed to how good an actor Mike is, because we were talking earlier about how good an actor Mike is. Now it's about how good an actor Jonathan Banks is. I think that conversation and then what happens after is some of his best work. So wanted to hear, and this goes to that little anecdote I mentioned I was going to get to in our preamble. So before the episode started, we were doing our predictions, and my guest was insisting that what was going to happen was Mike is going to find a way. Mike is going to find a way because he's going to do everything he can to convince Gus that this guy doesn't need to be killed. He's going to make the case. He's going to do it. He's going to bend over back and he's going to get him out. She thought it would even last until the following season, and I was like, yeah, no, Mike's going to kill him. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be tragic. I've been saying it on the podcast for I don't know how many weeks now, at least 2 or 3. It's like that. It has. That's what it has to be, because that's the only way it becomes truly a major thing. Not just the fact that he has to kill someone, but he has to kill someone who's essentially an innocent person. It's not like he's killing another, like he's killing another hitman or a crook or a criminal or whatever.
Plus, it's like, it works better on a production level too, because I mean that actor is a German national here, doing a work visa, so bringing him back for another season just to be an episode or two just isn't it isn't good business if it can be avoided.
Jesus. Okay, so anyway, so let's talk about the stuff with Mike and Gus, and then once we get through that, then we can get to what ends up happening between Mike and Werner here. So since I led off with Jamie before, I can lead off with Brian this time. Brian, go.
I really enjoyed seeing the humanity in Mike. You see it. There's a world weariness to him in almost everything he does, where he carries such weight of what's happening, but no matter what the decision is, he's able to shoulder that weight and do what needs to be done. But you see him as respectfully as he can, beg Gus as much as Mike could ever beg to let him handle it, that he can fix it. And it's clear that it's not going to work, but even to the bitter end, he's still saying, I can handle it, until he knows he can't. So I think that's the tragedy of Mike, is in many ways, Jimmy's a bad guy that does good stuff trying to be good. And I think Mike is, at essence, a good guy that is doing bad things. They're sort of like two people meeting on a Venn diagram, with one being bad and pretending to be good, and one good being bad, and they're both meeting on the way down to where they ultimately end up. I mean, you see, like in Mike, there's no joy in it, and he doesn't really want the worst thing to happen, and he tries, whereas with Jimmy it's sort of the opposite. And the way that he, even when he does the thing he knows he has to do, he's very resigned to it, and is still trying to lobby for this man.
Right.
You lost me. The only Venn diagram I can think of right now is the one of people that Scott cares about, which is a yellow circle, very small, and then the rest of the world.
Wow, that's a call. Is that like a Facebook call about that like two people?
Yeah, that's a deep dive. Yeah,
it's a super deep dive. I think it was like a yellow circle and a red dot or something like.
Yeah. I think God will probably remember, but I'm not sure if anybody else listening will.
Right. And I wasn't even the red dot myself, because I don't care about myself. Jamie, rescue us from this way too inside baseball talk. What were your thoughts?
I mean, I can't really follow up on the whole Mike bit there that Brian brought us, because that's pretty excellent. I didn't even think about the comparison and juxtaposition of Jimmy's character, but the whole thing with Werner at the end was it was like really sad, because you could see these two men like coming to the realization that there's no other way. And the person who's going to get shot is like, doesn't like it, but has this strange way of being able to accept it. I guess probably just to keep his life safe. But then when he had to make the phone call to his wife, and then he had to be gruff with her and kind of fight with her to get her off the phone and get her to safety, it kind of gave me like a throwback to Walt calling Skylar. So I thought about that a little bit with that whole last phone conversation that they had. But it was a really intense scene, and it wasn't like there was a lot of there wasn't like a lot of over the top expression going on. It was really subtle, but it was really heavy that entire time.
Right. Right.
Can I add something real quick that Jamie just reminded me of?
No.
Nope. Request denied. Move on.
No, it just reminded me of something, and that is that, Mike is a very meticulous, careful guy, but that he cared about Werner so much that he let Werner use his phone.
Yes.
And, the Mike would never do something like that could potentially expose him or put him in, jeopardy or danger, and to let him use his phone, it was another thing where basically deep down, he had the best hopes for Werner. It just didn't work out.
Right.
Yeah. It's also, I think the scene becomes a little bit more tragic too, because there really isn't a bad guy in the scene. I mean, while Gus, for example, isn't exactly a straight a good guy in this situation, but you really can't. Blame him for his what he's doing here. I mean, he doesn't really have a choice in the matter, for what Gus needs to get done. And you got Mike and Werner, so I mean, all of them. So it just makes it, for me, just that much more difficult of a situation, because there really isn't like somebody to blame. I guess Lalo didn't make the situation any better by talking to Werner for a little bit. That definitely didn't help things. But in this scene, that isn't really something that anybody's thinking about.
Well, I think it's that conversation with Lalo which kind of cinched it. That was the point where that became there's no other choice. There's no other option.
Yeah.
But yeah. I don't know if I want to let Gus off the hook quite as easily, but I know, but from a pure pragmatic standpoint, yes, because from the way he sees it, especially now with the Lalo situation, he doesn't feel he has any other choice. He can't. This is not a thread he can leave untied. This needs to be taken care of. But like I said, it helped a storyline that, like I had been saying, it was fine. I mean, I liked it, but I also knew, the whole thing with the super, like, this kind of filler, telling us about something that I didn't have really that much, wasn't really all that mysterious to me. I don't know how much I want to spend on the building of a super lab kind of a thing. And the Germans were, especially the Kai stuff, was kind of, which was, I always thought was kind of a red herring, because they were making it too obvious that Kai's an asshole, though. They're probably going to kill him. So it wasn't until the episode when Werner is in that bar with those two other guys, like, oh, now I see what they're setting up. Now it's going to mean something. He's the only one of those characters that we're getting to know, and who's actually sympathetic. Who, he's a decent guy, and even why he wants to leave, it's not because he wants to run over to a strip club or this, that. It's because he wants to see his wife that he hasn't seen for so many months. And he made a connection with Mike. I mean, even though Mike hasn't disclosed that much, Mike's told more to Werner than to any other character he's run into on the show that isn't that isn't his daughter-in-law or something like that. So the Jonathan Banks is it once again, I think we've all of us have said at one point or another on this podcast, the face acting, the expressions on his face during the conversation with Gus, and then when he realizes what he ultimately has to do, just so powerful and really, I'm hard pressed to remember on another dramatic series being that emotionally devastated. Sounds like a bit much, but I'll just use it because I can't think of another word right now. Devastated by a side character who I only met briefly over the course of a couple episodes, being executed, and I think a lot of it was the tragedy. It wasn't so much caring about Werner, even though maybe I did, but it's also knowing Mike has now crossed that line. He's now permanently part of this because like I've been saying, he's killed on their behalf. This isn't the same as setting up a super lab or running around with whether it be drug things that are this is murder. It doesn't so this is so for me, like for his storyline, this is what I think permanently ingratiates himself as part of that. And even though I think obviously he was already, but this is to a much higher degree. So
he's done in many ways what happened to his son. He killed somebody who there was some question, was his son dirty or not? But basically he thought his son was a good guy and he was executed, and it hurt other people, including him. And now he knows Werner is a family man. And was Werner dirty or not for doing this job? That's debatable, but it's not black and white. And he killed him, and he sent that pain out to the world in the same way that he received that pain when his son was killed.
That's a good question. If he's the engineer helping to build a super lab, does that therefore make him dirty?
Well, yeah, I would say that he knows what he's doing is illegal. Are all the thousands of guys who are working on the Death Star, are they therefore evil? So therefore, it's okay that they blew up the Death Star and killed all those contractors and. Well, I'd say that I wouldn't say there was probably a lot of contractors in the first Death Star. The second one was still under construction.
Yeah, I'm talking about the second
one. It still is there. Okay, second one, yeah, and all those.
But on the first one, you figure that it's like janitors.
But for me, this scene with Mike killing him, it kind of it's definitely different in its own way, but it does kind of have the same feeling to me as Walt letting Jane die at the end of Breaking Bad. In Breaking Bad season 2, which coincidentally led to Mike's appearance on the show for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like a similar thing. We're not exactly the same, but definitely like thematically similar. And at that point, we didn't have a lot of loathing discussed for Walt too. So having to watch him struggle with making the decision that he really didn't want to make, but when away his back was kind of against the wall and felt he had to make with Mike's situation, it's a little bit more cut and dry because he had a boss that he had to be responsible to. But I think the two things definitely feel similar to me in the same way.
Right. Although I guess the difference would be maybe that this act that Mike does, I don't think will turn any viewers against Mike.
No.
Whereas the Walt and Jane stuff, that was the first big thing that started to turn certain people against Walt, and that they couldn't get past that. But yeah, it's definitely the idea that the Weeder be this it's hard for me to say he can't really say Walt took her life. It's more because he let her die, but it's more indirect. It's still the same idea, but it is being in some way either directly or indirectly responsible for a death of another, and what that means to your character, and what that change represents. Because even if Mike on the surface will not appear that he's actually quote unquote changed, I think he has. I think this to me is, other than when he first gets involved with the whole Salamancas and Tuco at way back when, this is the first major thing. It's the major thing.
Yeah, well, what you were saying with the face acting earlier, I mean, I'd be interested to go back and see. I mean, in Breaking Bad, we didn't get to see Banks do a ton of crazy, facial acting. I mean, it was usually just, the cold, dead killer that he transforms into, and then just, impatient with all the bullshit he had to put up with. But I'd be interested in going back to some of his earlier similar things in Better Call Saul, and just to see what kind of expressions he has there, and compare and contrast them. When he kills his son's killers. Versus when he was, getting ready to kill Hector. It would be I just would be interested to see the kind of stuff, because he's just got, he's such a great actor and able to do so much with, just a glance and a wince and a, lip maneuver. I don't know what I'm trying to say there, but I would like to watch those three things and see how they how they evolve or whatever.
But if I want to play devil's advocate for just a minute, a thought I had that I can't answer. I don't have the answer. But in a way, did Mike kill him so that it would be cleaner? That if Gus's guys showed up, did he save Werner from possibly being tortured? I mean, Werner was dead. Did he save Werner from being tortured and being murdered in a much worse way? By doing
I thought about that too. But I mean, maybe he just liked him. He didn't want him. He didn't want it to be scary. Maybe.
You know, I just think it's more of like a personal, like a personal code type thing. I mean, because I don't think that, Victor or Tyrus would exactly be, just pulling a bunch of crazy shit with him. I think they would just, would just take him out. But it's always possible. But I think
he had to put down his own dog.
Yeah, well, his German Shepherd.
German Shepherd, Jesus damn. So we have 5-0 and K9. Those are the two episodes. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Old Werner. I think it was more about that he wanted to be the one to do it because it would still be done with a sense of honor and compassion, as opposed to just being executed by random thugs and dropped in a hole somewhere. So he thought, and also he's also taking responsibility because this is Mike's problem. He was the one in charge. He saw this coming from what happened at the bar, from when they were watching, whatever. He escaped from Mike. I think Mike felt it was his responsibility. This is his problem. This is what he. So it was up to him to fix it, and since he couldn't fix it, it was up to him to clean it up. To be the cleaner, which again is how we first met him in Breaking Bad, as like the cleaner.
This will definitely serve to make whatever future interactions he has with Lalo. I mean, they're I think it'll make it more personal, since Lalo kind of forced his hand in the situation when he was trying to clean it up in the best way possible. I think that will definitely make things so their adversarial relationship will be more more heated, because I'm doubting Mike's going to be super happy with that, even though he himself feels guilty and responsible for it. He's not going to be happy that a third party ended up forcing his hand and he had to do the hard thing he didn't want to do.
I think it adds an element to it, or adds a bit more weight to it. I would be shocked if it's ever really referenced, but I do think it adds something to it. Absolutely. A much bigger factor than, this guy's been following me around and all that stuff. But, it's more like what you just said, that due to what this guy did, I had to do something I didn't want to do. I had to take a life that really didn't deserve that to happen. But, because Lalo makes that phone call and he answers and he doesn't realize what's going on because, he's an idiot. Ultimately, he had to be put down, like a German Shepherd.
Yeah, and Mike has been proven to take these kind of things, seriously before. Just like when the one dude got wasted by Hector or whatever, just because Mike crashed their drug truck. That guy was a true innocent, didn't have anything to do with anything. But Mike definitely, he's been proven to. He doesn't have any patience for that, and it's not like he's going to go out in like a big vendetta like he did against Hector after that. But it's definitely something where whatever he does, he's it'll be consistent.
Right. And we really can't leave this half of the story yet without making at least a comment or two about what ultimately happens with the Super Lab, where we see the return of Gale. Of course, any of us who were watching the credits in the opening of the show saw the actor's name and knew he was going to appear.
These stupid actors unions can just go fuck themselves for all their dumb rules, because I hate when stuff like that happens. Every now and then they can make some kind of thing and they get it in the end credits. They didn't do it this time, but just.
By the way, you know what? Here's the thing with that. That's kind of bullshit. because I'm not going to blame the unions. I'm going to blame the show, because there are any number of other shows that don't do credits over the opening scene of a show. Most shows I watch don't do that. All the credits, other than the main actors and writer director and the opening credits, that's it. Everybody else is at the end. But these shows, because they have to have the constant running credits, Lost did it, Breaking Bad does it, now this show does it. They don't have to, and that wouldn't have been spoiled for us if this had been like other shows that I watch. Whether they be streaming or on HBO or whatever. So I blame the show is at least equally culpable for that, because they could have made a decision from the get go. Okay, we're not going to do the opening credits that way, because they don't have to. That's their decision, because people want their names. You need to see like 18 different executive producers in the opening. No, we don't. We don't need to see that in the opening credits. So, but I agree. But I don't want to let the show off the hook either, because it's their fault as well.
Yeah, that's fair. Fair enough.
Bastards. Because I would love, because I wouldn't have even occurred to me, but I saw his name. I was like, oh, David Constable's in this. Oh, I guess we're gonna see Gale at some point, And then after I was like, oh, he's gonna appear at the end. Okay. But it was.
You want to know what's awesome? I didn't read any of them, so it was a surprise for me.
Oh. Well, you know what's more awesome? What's more awesome?
You have the option to not read it.
But it was basically an unneeded throwaway scene, so you weren't spoiled on something that really wasn't that great in the first place. So, fooey.
True that.
Oh boy. Okay. Can't imagine why we don't get more 5-star. But it was kind of fun to see him show up at the end, because at this point, if they've let all the other Germans go, though, for those who do care about the whole construction of the super lab, it's kind of like, well, where are they going to go from here? Are they going to bring in another crew to finish the work? Is Gale going to have anything to do with this, even though that's not really what he does? But I just like that they kind of brought that, they just brought that together a little bit. In a weird way, it almost would have been funny if they hadn't had Gale appear earlier in the season. Because that moment when he appears early in the season, if you really think about it, it wasn't really necessary at all. And if you had just had him show up here, it would have been something a bit more, oh, wow. Again, I'm not knocking them having him show up earlier on, because then we wouldn't have gotten the whole Element song done, which is awesome. But it just occurred to me. Anyway. Okay, I'm getting the impression that we can... Wow, 40 minutes. We can move on to Jimmy. And I know that in previous episodes we tend to say we're talking about Kim and Jimmy, and of course we are going to talk about Kim during this. But this is really about Jimmy. In fact, if you really think about it, you could actually even say it's really more about Chuck and Jimmy. Whether it be the opening flashback or the shadow that Chuck, his death has cast over Jimmy, and how it's impacted everything he's doing with what we see in this episode right up until the end. So, like with the Mike thing, breaking it down into just like 3 little bit chunks here. First, the flashback. Gotta tell you, folks who know me well or know me on Facebook or whatever, they know I'm a karaoke guy. So there's something really special about an opening flashback that features both Jimmy and then eventually Chuck singing karaoke. And I will tell you that last night, after the unfortunate events of baseball for me, I did eventually go out to my usual Tuesday night karaoke thing. And the third and last song I did was a tribute to Better Call Saul, and I did do the ABBA song, "The Winner Takes It All." And as my friend was there who had to watch, it's like you were just as good as Chuck. It's like, I wasn't I? I was certainly better than Jimmy. So anyway, let's. There's a lot I want to say about that flashback, but I think I want to see if you guys say it first. Well, I don't have to.
Yeah. So, yes. Anybody who was at Raleigh 2017 when I was doing karaoke, Ernie singing "Total Eclipse of the Heart" was basically the exact same as me singing.
That's true.
Yeah.
Were you doing lip maneuvers while you were singing? I'm sorry, I just wrote down the phrase lip maneuvers.
No, I really got into it, but I didn't really care to be, awesome. But it was fun.
Okay. So back to the flashback. Actually, since you're talking, so what, Dan? What you leave for a change? Because since we have the most history of talking about Jimmy and Chuck, what were you thinking about that? What did you think about that flashback? What did it mean to you?
Well, it was definitely a nice surprise to see Michael McKean brought back on the show again that I wasn't expecting. I guess I wasn't really, expecting to see him at all this season, so it's been a pleasant surprise each time. And this just was just a nice, surprisingly touching and poignant scene, considering we've seen so much toxicity between those two characters over the last, I'd say pretty much all of season 2 and 3. So it was just a, surprisingly strong, heartfelt scene with, some fun singing, with Jimmy also singing mediocre and poor like myself. There's one thing that I like, that I noticed, that it just makes me respect the show and the attention to detail a little bit. But there's a scene where, when Jimmy convinces Chuck to stay and he sits down, Chuck sits down, kind of, a table at the front, and he just takes a quick glance at the electric light things on the table, just a quick glance at it, but it's just enough to know that, like, you can just tell that he's, like, an early stage of just kind of, like, maybe not realizing there's something going on, but thinking about it is just a little bit of a weird look that he gives at the light, and I just love that just, like, I'm sure 90% of the people that watched the episode missed it, but it's definitely there, and I really respect that level of attention to the timeline and the characters and whatever.
Right. I think I might have missed it, so there you go. I'm in the 90%. Jamie?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty fun to see him reprise his role of David St. Hubbins. Put on his Spinal Tap boots again. That was pretty fun. It was really kind of like melancholy, though. I mean, like, it was fun and entertaining. It was kind of cute to see these two actually like each other for a minute on the outside. It was really sad. It was really sad because you see that Chuck really did, even though he didn't approve of Jimmy's methods ever throughout life. I mean, all the way back to when they were, you saw that he cared. He stayed, he sang with him. He had fun doing it. He stayed at his apartment. He had to make him pancakes in the morning. You really saw him be a big brother, and it was really sad because that bond that they had was going to separate about as much as a brotherhood can. I mean, but I don't know. There was parts of it that, I kind of laughed and smiled and it was cute, but really it just kind of set the whole episode up to be like, this is really going to be a downer. Mm-hmm. Like, I knew it was going to be a downer all the way through, as good as the episode was.
Right.
Yeah, and the one thing about this, it kind of made me question the way that Chuck treats Jimmy in the future, just because the way he's behaving in these scenes is so much opposed to how he portrayed his past relationship and feeling towards Jimmy in the future. So I wonder if he just was lashing out and trying to wound Jimmy in any way possible, but wasn't necessarily completely authentic about some of it. Chuck went through plenty of stuff. He was injured, and I'm sure us ourselves and people we've known, you get a nasty flu or something like that, and you just be an asshole to somebody. Well, Chuck had something like that times like a zillion. So, maybe his feelings towards Jimmy weren't permanently toxic, because he really for kind of vouching for Jimmy for his getting his bar or whatever the hell that was exactly. Brian could probably do it if I was willing to let him get a word in, which I'm not.
Yeah,
but between that and grudgingly doing karaoke with them, even though there might have been a little bit of like a brotherly dick measuring contest with the karaoke skill there, and then the scene where they're sleeping and stuff. It made me reconsider some of the things Chuck had said to deliberately wound Jimmy in the future?
I could let Brian talk now, but I'm going to choose not to right now. So.
Excellent.
Because I'm afraid some of my points are going to get lost, and I kind of want to follow up with the two of you just said before they kind of it falls out of my head right now. A few things. It's number one. I thought the flashback was super significant because it genuinely is one of the only times we've seen them together, especially in a flashback mode, where you do see a genuine familial connection and brotherly love even between the two, and either be him choosing to stay or get up on stage with him, and especially what he does at his looks like his apartment or motel room. I wasn't really clear on that. I guess it was his apartment at the time. And picking up on what Jamie was saying, what made that flashback to me so significant was it's a flashback that has moments that are of joy or fun, like obviously the singing, especially when Chuck actually takes over the microphone, which I thought was hysterical. And I was going, of course, Spinal Tap, of course he can sing. But it's ultimately really sad because we know what happens and where this goes. And my feeling as far as Chuck's feelings, or how they manifest, and the division between his brother, I do believe what Chuck said in those later episodes, because this is the beginning of Jimmy entering the law. It's what Jimmy does as far as the law is concerned, which is that which Chuck holds most precious, most dear. It's his life is about the law. And seeing the way Jimmy treats it, and as a lawyer, that he in such disregard, that is what I think starts to create that chasm between them, to the point where because then he can't respect his brother. He doesn't, and to the point where he's everything. He's like the worst in his mind. Jimmy becomes like the worst lawyer cliche, and everything that he would never want a lawyer or someone in the legal profession to be. I think that's what really drives that wedge between them more than anything else.
But if this is like kind of one genesis of that kind of division and disrespect that he has for Jimmy, then Chuck's statement of I never really cared about you at all would still be false, because while he had other motivations for parental issues and stuff like that, but I'm just saying that if this is something where oh, American Samoa, fuck this, oh, you're doing all this half-ass stuff, whatever. If that's where things start to get worse and worse and worse, and I still think that his statement where he's just trying to say I never gave a fuck
he's lashing out until he'll go away. I agree with that. Yeah, but I don't think he actually meant that. I thought that was bullshit. That was just him being either it's cruel to be kind or just cruel. Just to finally, because if he doesn't treat him like that, then Jimmy's going to come knocking on his door again the next day or the day after that. So he pretty much annihilates him just to try to permanently cut him out of his life at that point, by saying something that nasty. So I agree, yeah. But my point is that I don't think there's anything that's not genuine about the way these two are here. But I also think Chuck's animosity towards his brother, which steadily grew. Everything from the way he acted, around his wife that we saw in that one flashback, and the stuff with the law and everything, to what he ends up doing and basically pretty much trashing his career, and what he does to him in that courtroom hearing. So there's a whole bunch of things that leads to him to say that, and so yes, he's lashing out, much the way Jimmy lashed out at Kim in a previous episode.
That's what I was going to say. We saw Jimmy do that 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So, Brian, is there anything? I'm sorry.
Also, there is an element too of Chuck kind of. He can't publicly, shame his brother, necessarily. So in a way, he probably feels obligated where he has to show some kind of public support for him, even if he doesn't want to. And I'm sure that, he probably resents that at some point too, where, he doesn't necessarily want to vouch for him, but, feels that he has to for a variety of reasons. So I'm sure that there's also that kind of going on too.
Oh, by the way, we didn't. We made a reference to Totally Eclipse Heart, but we didn't mention the fact that they brought Ernie back.
Oh yeah,
and we hadn't seen him all season. And we were like, oh, that's weird that there's no reference to him after Chuck died, since he was the guy working on his behalf all the time. So it was really cool that they were able to bring that actor back for this. Also, I love the whole HHMM gag. That was pretty good.
So since we don't have anybody on the podcast that could explain this, lawyer vouching thing or anything, I suppose we could just move on to the next section.
Bueller.
Oh, you're still awake.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
I just wanted to make sure that I let everybody get their points out.
So, I did have one more, but I don't think you're going to say it, so I'll let you go finally.
My thoughts on the flashback were it was incredibly bittersweet to see both of them at their best and see where they devolved to from there. It actually really, that scene and when it ended kind of choked me up because I have a little brother I don't always agree with. But maybe I see this differently. I think that what you see throughout the flashback is an older brother who stands up for his brother at his swearing ceremony. And basically it's ceremonial, but you're vouching for this person to come into the bar. And he stands up with him. They go to karaoke and Jimmy's butchering the song. Chuck steps in and sings better. They go home. Chuck sort of takes care of him. He makes breakfast in the morning. And I think when their relationship devolves is when then Jimmy is taking care of Chuck. Mm-hmm. Because Chuck gets so disabled by his disorder that I think that's the real... Whatever Jimmy does in the law, Chuck always knew who Jimmy was. But add to that the fact that now he feels useless in ways that he didn't feel before, and he has to rely on Jimmy to care for him in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And but to see them with sort of the roles reversed in the good old days, and both of them at their best, and know where they ended up was really tragic, and it choked me up a little bit thinking about me and my brother. There are similarities, not that one of us skirts the law, but we don't agree on things and we fight, and sometimes we have very strong disagreements and don't talk for periods of time, and so it was very moving to me.
Well, I was also reasonably moved by it, and I'm an only child, but I'm an easy tear upper. The one last thing I want to say about it, and because we're going to get to it eventually anyway, it's like the other main reason that you have that flashback, and they've done this a couple times this season, and I've really enjoyed the way they've constructed these episodes, where they'll show us something at the beginning of the episode, and you realize what they've done is lay a foundation for something that's going to happen at the end of the episode, and how it's either going to underscore or undercut or just make something that much more poignant or tragic or whatever. And it's hard not to realize. It's hard to ignore seeing him and his brother in this opening scene and where this episode ends, as far as Jimmy and Chuck and that memory or whatever. And that's real, and it's there for that purpose as well, because it makes that makes what happens towards the end of the episode, which we'll get to, that much more of a gut punch, so to speak, which is fascinating. The more and more I think about it, because I don't think at any point in time when we were watching Better Call Saul, at least in the first season or so, that we thought we'd feel ugh when you realize that he was about to be Saul Goodman essentially, but they pulled it off here.
I did appreciate how they did the not standard TV thing of they kind of let the scene have breathe more than usual. The end scene where they're singing in bed. I mean, rather than just have them do a line or something and then fade out. I mean, they let it go for quite a while. To a level where it just didn't feel like anything I'd really seen before. And I always like that kind of thing where they don't just do the the standard pat thing that you expect, and it was nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, another really important thing that we learned is that 2 nipples are not necessary. Just saying. It's an important takeaway.
But by the way, that was an option for the intro tonight. I was thinking 1 nipple to 2 nipples or 4 nipples or 8 nipples, and I thought I'd start laughing during it, so I didn't do it. So, moving from that, then we have what really is most or practically all of the Jimmy storyline for this episode, and really where we've been going all season, is the overall scheme that's clearly been hashed with Kim in order to help Jimmy get his license back to practice law. So we've got a bunch of scenes that are filtered throughout the episode. So I kind of wanted to talk about that, and then we can use that to then springboard right into the scene that the scene that made me think this is. I almost think this should be like for your consideration kind of time, because that Odenkirk is amazing in this episode. He's always good, but I think he really does exceptional work in this episode, and especially that scene towards the end. So, Brian, since what made you go last time? What did you think of all the different machinations and everything that especially Jimmy, but to a lesser extent Kim as well, were trying to pull off throughout this episode in order to get his license back?
I had, a couple of thoughts I had that Kim really figured out the long game on the bar community and all that, and really worked Jimmy through it. But when it came down to the final thing, it's almost like she created a monster that got beyond her control. And, at the end, when he put the letter away, about halfway through that, like when he first started, he got me. And then about halfway through it, I said, no, he's still conning. And at the end, Kim was his biggest mark. Like, he fooled her. And her realization that Jimmy hasn't really dealt with Chuck and hasn't really taken any of this seriously in the way to make it about something other than himself, that she got played. And so much so that, the line of, I will never, and I think that's the part where I thought, okay, he's totally full of crap. When he said, if I'm allowed again, I will never dishonor the McGill name. And the first thing he does is answer your big question, Scott, that we talked about before. So it was quite stunning. And I thought Odenkirk, I don't know what, his speech was great, but when he was in the car crying and saying no, 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 like, I felt sorry for him. And then later, looking back on it at the end of the episode, I thought, I don't feel sorry for him anymore. Like, that wasn't genuine sadness or remorse over Chuck. It was all about him.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a little more. My opinion of this is a little bit different, because I think in light of his earlier breakdown, I think that there's a chance that what he saw that he did on the stand was actually, more authentic than he's willing to admit to Kim, and he's just trying to. I'm not exactly sure why he's trying to, act like, oh, I'm not really bothered by this, whatever. I fooled these guys, yay, look at me, I'm such a great, con dude, whatever. So, it certainly, you certainly could be right, and that's certainly, the way Kim definitely feels like she's been fooled. but and bought what he said there. But I think that that there's a chance that he was actually like there was more honesty in there than he's actually telling Kim, maybe. Jamie, Scott?
I'll let Jamie go.
I'm kind of more with Brian on this. We always talk about how Jimmy hasn't dealt with Chuck and Jimmy hasn't dealt with his feelings. I think Jimmy's dealt with his feelings about Chuck. I just think it's showing us like he really doesn't care that much. Like there's all this, like he's got to process this, and we see all these memories or these flashbacks, I guess, that show that there was a relationship. But I think at the end of it, I mean, he's been, he operates on a pretty selfish level, and I don't think he cares as much as the rest of us thinks that he should care.
That's
the way I saw it when he started crying in his car. Like when he was crying in his car, the way I took it was that he hasn't gotten that upset about Chuck's passing, all these different things that have been happening, but like his car, and he loves that car. The whole thing when he got the new car and he ends up going back to this car. I feel like he's more upset about his car not starting.
Okay,
than he was about his brother dying.
Okay.
All
right, you guys.
I think
you guys are missing something, but I'll wait till you finish before I jump in here. Go on.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Also, I just wanted to, because I just thought this was funny, so I had to write it down. When he's at the grave and he's at the tombstone, and like the couple's walking away, and he's pretending to cry. I always just keep the closed caption up on my TV because I have small children that make a lot of noise. And the closed caption actually said, "Boo hoo, boo hoo, fake cry."
Yes. No, I love the boo hoo. Yeah, which
I thought was really funny.
I always leave the captioning on because I watch it late. That way I don't have to worry about missing anything. And I thought that was hysterical. Also, I remembered, didn't happen last year, but 25 years ago when I did my first extra work, I knew one of the things that extras do is there's certain phrases they'll just keep saying over and over to make it appear that they're having a conversation. Yeah. And I do remember one of them being watermelon pickles.
Pickles.
I thought that was a brilliant, funny touch. I bet all the extras on the show probably really appreciate that. I thought that was funny. I don't want to jump to the ending right off the bat, since I kind of end up skipping over the entire episode if I do that. But we'll go to the crying thing. Okay, the thing that got left out in this conversation and what he's actually crying about, and even though it is still more, can be seen more as a selfish or self-centered thing. Kind of skipped over the whole thing with the scholarship and the kid, kid trying to get the scholarship, and there's the one kid that he kind of sees, as himself, and he does he makes a convincing case. He works through him. He convinces Howard even to do a revote, but apparently he isn't convincing enough to get her the scholarship, and then he goes out and has that whole conversation to this poor bewildered girl who, unlike the other kids, did not come from any form of privilege. Had been busted for shoplifting, didn't quite have the grades that they did, yada yada yada. But everything he's saying to her, he's saying about himself, and he even references the flashback with about the winner takes it all. He actually references what happened, that flashback, while he's talking to her. But he is. See, here's the funny thing. When you guys are talking about him, either he genuinely feels any sorrow or anything about Chuck or not. What we're seeing him get more worked up, more upset by what happens to this kid, rather than anything in his life as far as his brother was concerned. Because when he gets in the car later, that's after that whole day. Because he's it's the parking lot of HHM, and just the car not starting. That's like the breaking point. But him crying, he's not crying because the car won't start. He's crying over what had happened, but the thing is that becomes the decision is, okay, is it because he has he genuinely feels bad for this girl, or is it because it's more about he's seeing himself? and he's seeing himself being kicked again, even though it's taking on the form of that girl. And I think it's more of that, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, then I'm sure
Yeah.
Chuck's death is tied into that somewhat, but it's definitely not like the primary thing he's losing it about. I mean, all these shitty things are all tied together, but I agree with Scott there that he's probably not too shook up about the car.
I can too.
And quite frankly, the stuff with Chuck and whether or not he's had, I don't know what that sound was just now. I'm sorry to our listeners.
My cat walked into my phone and smacked it with his head.
Gotcha. Where was I saying? Oh, the whole thing. Whether Jimmy has ever had, the true grief-wringing moment to process and whatever as far as Chuck is concerned. If you really think about it, it's not like he never reacted to it. It's not like he was like cold and didn't care from the get-go. The entire first episode, he was numb. And he was obviously sad. When he's sitting outside that house, because I actually watched the first episode again, because I did a mini binge, you see the sadness. You see how he's torn up about it. The fact that he's able to then, based on what Howard does and whatever. And by the way, I've thought more and more about the whole Howard thing with Chuck. And even though, yes, we all know the threads eventually tie back to what Jimmy did with the insurance thing, so you can say it's like the dominoes led to that. But, and I can't believe I'm actually saying this, it kind of is Howard's fault more in the long run, because Howard was the last one to kind of like, Howard's the one who pushed that final domino. Howard doesn't do what he does. Right. Chuck doesn't kill himself. Howard made that decision, he abandoned loyalty, etc., blah, blah, blah. So Howard's right to feel as bad as he does. And yeah, we can say Jimmy's kind of a dick for not letting him off the hook. But in a weird way, Howard, we kept saying because Howard just left Jimmy off the hook. And he just ran with it. But Jimmy's never been one to show that he's ever really loved Howard all that much anyway. So why? And now he hears something which he realizes, like, okay, I might have sharpened the knife, but Howard's the one who stuck it in him. Maybe in a weird way, Jimmy's right to not let him off the hook initially, and then he kind of makes up for it later in the season anyway. But where the hell were we talking about here? Oh yeah. Okay, we'll get into the end thing, which I love that scene so much. My feeling on it was it was working on a couple different levels here, because number one, by design you're supposed to question it. You're not supposed to be sure because the irony is, this is the guy who the reason why he didn't get his license back in the first place is because they didn't think he was sincere. And now we're questioning his sincerity because we're trying to figure out if he's telling the truth or not. My feeling on it was there are obviously scripted things here, or semi-scripted things here. The thing with the letter, then putting it away, and then he says after, he thought of that on the spot. Maybe he did, because Jimmy is very good at, just like Odenkirk himself, he's a brilliant improvisationalist. My belief was, up to a certain point, what he's saying is at least mostly true. And then at a certain point, it's not. And the fact that it's almost unfortunate that Kim seemed to be confused and buy into it the whole way through, because one almost wants to shake your finger at Kim's like, Kim, you kind of should know better. You kind of should. You didn't catch certain things, which would have made you whatever. It's because Kim wants to believe. Kim wants this to be true. And
she's seeing what she wants to see, but she's been trying to trigger this kind of like release of grief basically the entire season. So I mean, she definitely is buying it hook, line, and sinker because it's what she's wanted to see. Right. She just apparently, she thinks that's what he needs to do to process what's going on.
Yeah.
Whether or not she's right or wrong doesn't matter, but she definitely. Go ahead.
Exactly, because we were talking about there are certain over the course of the season there are things about Jimmy, especially as far as Chuck is concerned, where we said that he's in some form of denial about certain things, and maybe he is. Kim's also in denial, and when we see it here more so than at any other point in the series, where and you're watching her face in the courtroom, and then after. And I'm like going, oh, they're really setting her up for the big fall here. And it was just disturbing to me. Disturbing is probably a bit much. Because there's that certain point where he just goes a little bit too far. And that's maybe it's because we've seen so much of Jimmy or Saul or whatever you want to call it. And it's like, oh, this is bullshit. But she's already bought so much into it. She's just in denial about the rest of it. So when the very first words he says to her when they come out of there, he refers to them as being suckers, I think. And Kim's the biggest sucker of them all.
Right.
And right there, and this is one of those things like if this episode had been 10 minutes longer, and it should not have been, it couldn't have ended any better than where it did. And I'll tell you why in a second. The next day, if Kim still is with him, then it's her. Then she's the one with the problem. Because now it's like it's been revealed. This is who he is now. This is where he's been headed. If you still quote unquote believe in him after that, then it's on. That it's what is it like the shame on me, shame on you, that whole thing. That's what it becomes for Kim right there. It's like at this point, if you remain with this guy, it's on you, man. Because he's revealed to you in no uncertain terms what kind of person he has become at this point. And maybe to a certain extent he always was. Because I'm not saying he doesn't have any humanity. Of course he does. He's not evil. He's not, I think Dan has used the word sociopath at certain times. And there's little tendencies there. You certainly see it here. You really do see it here. I won't disagree. If you use that word tonight, I couldn't quite disagree with you tonight. That's for sure.
And speaking of sociopath, we should let Brian say something about this too.
Okay, Brian, I will. You can rejoin.
Well,
he started the whole thing, so I don't feel bad about Brian. Here we go.
I just wanted to call him a sociopath.
I agree with you. I agree with you about half, Scott, but the other half I don't about Kim, about she should see it coming, is that in the past, Jimmy, and especially where he hasn't been a lawyer, he's been off running his con and not keeping her in the loop while she does her job, and they sort of had separate things. They came together and did this plan together, and he put something into it and did it in a way that he didn't share with her, and that's something that I don't think she should have expected, because they've done cons before and they've done them together and done them the way they discussed to do together, like the plans, like
I'm going to call a little bullshit on saying that when they've done other things together that she's been totally aware of everything he was going to do. I think he
certainly seemed to, he definitely thought that she was going to be like, oh yeah, nice move, Jimmy. I mean, he was completely oblivious to the fact that this would be something that bothered her, because he thought I'm in con mode, Kim's digging this, we've been doing a couple, missions together and shit, but he definitely thought that she was going to be like, yeah, good job, man, there. So there is an element to that too that kind of muddies the waters a bit. At least with his motivations.
The problem. One of the problems for him is that he doesn't get her in that regard. He doesn't get that. She liked the vicarious thrill of doing that, but she's not all about that. And at the end of the day, she's still, still a moral and just person, even if she gets a little bit dirty. He's not, and this subversion of it. And really, it's really trampling on the whole memory of his brother to this extent is what really. I mean, That's why she looks the way she looks. Because she just got conned. And she's been exposed to this person and what he does and how he goes about things for a really long time now. If she can't pick up on stuff at this point, I'm sorry, it's on her.
Well, I half agree with that, but I think the thing that pushes it over the line is that this was for him to come out and call the board suckers, and he played them, and none of it was real. It goes back to Chuck, and what's the thing she and Chuck always had in common is that at some point there is a baseline respect and love of the law, and like he doesn't care about any of it. And in that moment, like he seemed to like getting his license back was really important to him. And the thing that they needed to work on was to demonstrate, whether it was real or not, like he was sorry. And like it was all a con, but she thought like he really cared about something when he didn't care about anything other than winning. And that's why, the winner takes it all. All Jimmy cares about is winning. He doesn't care about what that means, who it affects. And that's what she learned. Like he couldn't even talk about his brother and be real. You think he's real? I don't think he's real. I think that when Jimmy was done with Chuck was when Chuck took his law license. I think at that point that he was done with him. Like you can Jimmy put up with a lot of shit from Chuck, but when you took away like his game, his ability to run his game through the law, like that was a bridge too far. Right. And for him to get it back and doesn't care that he got his first words aren't, I got my law license back. It wasn't that. It was, I won. Like it's all he gives a shit about. And that's to her, I think it makes sense. That's surprising. Because the whole goal is to get a law license back.
All right, here's my problem with a bunch of that. Number one, what he was, and you might have. I'm gonna lawyer you a little bit here, because he might not have quite gotten what I was saying. His words were true, even if the feelings weren't. So what he's recounting, what he's saying, is true. For the first chunk of what he's saying. I'm not saying he's actually feeling it because he's putting on a performance.
He's acting.
And for her to have, but for her to kind of fall for it, like the people at the board, it's like, I'm sorry, what were the different parts of this scheme that have been gone on where you had to like fake being sad at your brother's gravestone all day while people kept showing up? Or the whole dedicating a library and be outside looking like you're super sad the whole time. This is what he's been doing all week. And you were right there complicit with it. And now at the end,
I mean, she had a script. I mean, she was along with him, manipulating the whole situation. So I get what you're both saying.
No, I get. I don't, whether it be a show or a character, I'm not going to let someone off the hook just because I love Kim. I love Kim. But by the same token, I'm sorry, she should know better. And she's as much as fault at this, for falling for it, because she should have known better.
Can I interject?
Yes.
Okay. I think that you're both right on certain aspects. But I have the feeling from Kim's point of view that though she knows that this is all a scheme and this is like she's part of it, and let's pull people to his gravestone, and then we're going to have this memorial service at this, the reading center and all of that. She knows there's a game being played, but I think that Jimmy does feel some of it. She's not at the gravestone with him, reading the boo-hoo fake cry credits. And she's he's standing outside of the reading center, and she knows that this this is a con in some level, but I really think she only sees it as a con in the fact that we're bringing people in to prove that Jimmy is sincere. We're proving he's sincere. I do think she believes that this is going to be an epiphany moment for him when he's reading this letter, because every time he takes out that letter, from the first time he gets it, she gives him this look, that's like, okay, honey, like, here it is, feel something. And I think when he came out and he was like, I won, and a bunch of suckers, like, I really thought she felt like, there it is, he's having that moment. And yes, she knows that going to play it to his advantage, but I really truly think that Kimmy thought she was getting somewhere with him emotionally. I think she believed she was getting him to break the barrier that, see, I believe he doesn't have that barrier. That's just like Ryan said, he's done. He was done with, this is about winning the game. He got his license back. He wins. Chuck loses.
I'm not questioning that she believed it. My point I'm trying to make is, like, that's on her. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I can't disagree with that.
That's what I've been contending the entire time.
Right,
that's my whole point. It's like, she should have known better. I can't
agree with the fact that now that her eyes are opened to this, you're right. If the next episode we see, like, first of next season, and they're together, that's really problematic. That kind of goes back to our saying, like, they kind of have this codependency relationship going on, where one of them's an addict of some sort and the other one's like, here, let me help you keep your addiction, and pretend like it's really not there. But
like, how many times do you have to touch a hot pot and get burned before you realize you don't touch it?
Right.
I mean,
if she's there at the beginning of next season, if they're still together, I'm with you, shenanigans, and say that she should have seen it coming, and now she's going to end up deserving half the burns she gets.
And even if she wasn't there at the graveside, she heard the way he spoke about it, and she knows what he was doing.
Right.
There's no pretense. She never. There was never any indication that she thought he was actually choked up at the gravesite. That was not how that was portrayed. The same with outside the reading center thing, where he even said, because he actually would like to get some food, and she looks at it, it's like, oh yeah, it would look bad if he food. Okay, he's obviously not even remotely upset about anything. He knows, and she's aware that he's putting on an act for everyone else. So the fact that
she is absolutely aware of that, but I think that there's something we're not seeing with her point blank. She's hoping for that moment to happen.
Oh, of course.
I think because if she sees Jimmy have that moment, then it means that she's safe in that relationship with him, that she's made the right choices.
Made the right choice, right.
Mm-hmm. Sticking with him and supporting him.
Right.
And I really think that more of it's validation on her choices than it is on loving Jimmy.
Yes, I would agree with that as well.
I like how we're discussing. I like how we're discussing this legal drama, and I'm just sitting here listening to you three. Like, you're basically three attorneys, all arguing your case. Unfortunately, I'm not rapey enough to be a fucking judge, so I can't decide which of you is right. But it's
a requirement these days.
Oh, those robes. Yeah. So. Right, and it goes to what we were saying earlier about her being in. I mean, the fact that she is believing what he's saying, and it's like what you were saying, like and I truly believe you're right about. I would have used that phrase myself, that she's hoping this is his epiphany moment, and she falls for it. But I'm sorry, it's like that's on you, because you've seen. You've built up a fantasy in your mind thinking that would happen. Because you know what?
Oh, yeah,
I know it's a TV show, but that doesn't really happen. People don't have. Go ahead.
No, but it is kind of, it is a thing that people do, though. I mean, she wants to feel that her giving Jimmy these chances wasn't a mistake. I mean,
right.
That's the ego-driven thing too. Brian, I cut you off when I referred to myself as not being rapey. So if you want to say what you're going to say there?
No, I was just going to say. I mean, I think the thing the thing that this means going forward, to play off what Jamie and Scott said, is if she stays, knowing this, like, her downfall is ultimately less tragic if she has seen this and stays by his side. But I'm sure they'll pull it off. But again, I mean, I'm going to beat a dead horse and take it to the water and say this. I think part of saying where she stands is that we know the full arc of Jimmy, and she's there at the midpoint, and at the midpoint you still feel like you can avoid the crash. We know where he's going, so it's hard for us to be as objective about her decision as she is in that moment. Now, going forward, the part I will totally concede to you is, going forward, she's seen something very troubling. If he doesn't address and doesn't fix it, like there's no hope for them. But in the moment, to see what he did and for her to be floored doesn't surprise me, because there are various times that she's called him on his bullshit, and he's admitted it. Like when he didn't go to counseling, he didn't lie to her and say, I'm going to counseling, and wasn't. He just said, I'm not going. That's a more honest,
true
admission in a relationship, to say, I have a problem, but I'm still going to be honest in the perimeters of this particular relationship. But what he did here was really just show that I really think, like, for him, none of it is about anything other than winning, and he doesn't get her. He doesn't get that she won't win at all costs.
And I think she, I think she realizes too that, like, after she was so completely fooled by what she saw there, even though I wouldn't say he was necessarily conning her, but she totally bought him there. So I think there is an element too where, just like the other half of the episode, Werner was, no longer could be trusted. And I mean, Mike knew that. Kim can't trust Jimmy anymore. She can't believe, her perception of the reality involving him. She can't trust that anymore. She can't trust anything.
Yeah.
So,
right. I mean, we've seen her be upset, and we've seen her, like, question things, but we've never actually seen her strong. Like, we've never seen her, and at any point in any of the seasons, we've actually never seen her face drop to that point of, like, holy shit, and we saw it. Like, that was her, like, recognizing everything that's happened in the last few months was a scam. Even if it wasn't directed at her, she fell into this scam. Has she ever really met Saul? I mean, she's seen him on his commercials and stuff, but has she ever really interacted with Saul?
I think she was starting to.
Yes. And I think she's recognizing, like, because all of a sudden, God, this personality that the person I love is really starting to embody, like, holy shit, it has a name.
Right. And that's the guy that when the DA talked crap about him and she got upset, like, oh, well, you're, like, I heard his lawyer was this disgrace, blah, blah, blah. Like, now she's seeing the manifestation of what people have said about Jimmy and what those suggestions are. And she's seeing the kind of lawyer that real lawyers don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think Chuck saw the same thing.
Exactly.
The same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And her and Chuck love the law.
Right. Exactly.
And she's certainly seen it. She's seen elements of it before. I mean, too. Like, I mean, Jimmy was pretty freaking proud of his, like, amazing squat cobbler tape.
Wow.
I'm just done. Sorry.
No, that's great. Keep going. Keep going. That's great.
She was not. But she just wasn't impressed with him, and he was. He was definitely showing elements of, like, full sawmill there, because he was totally pleased with the crazy, manufactured evidence, clever bullshit that he came together there with the squat cobbler.
To be fair, that is a tongue twister. I'm just saying.
Oh, I'm definitely not visiting you anytime soon. But also, but in the episode where the DA refers to him, and If she had said disgraced, it wouldn't have been that big a deal. She calls him a scumbag lawyer.
Yes.
A little worse. And her reaction is, it's kind of like, ooh. But notice, and even later on when she's talking to him in that episode, and she's not, in that moment, she's not trusting him. When she's saying,
Right.
you're going to go along with what I said, and the whole thing is like, but she doesn't trust him. To the point where she even tries to, it's like, she knows that despite what they just said, they just talked about, he's going to go off and do his own thing. So when she buys all the art supplies and whatever, it's like, whatever, stop what you're doing. I have a better idea, Because, so we've already seen elements of, she already is, there's been parts where she's lost her faith or her trust in the guy before. And this is, and also, the thing we have to remember, this has been something that's been culminating for over, like, a year. Because he got his license taken away for a year. And, also, that means his brother died roughly, like, a year ago at this point, correct? I think I'm right about that. It says when they put the headstone up, it would be a year later.
Yeah.
Right.
So, even after all that time, the fact he's the way he is, that realization, but you've seen this for the last 12 months. There's nothing that, there should be nothing that ultimately shocking about it. The reason why she is what we were talking about before, is because she wants to believe. She's in, like we said, she's in denial. Dan was saying she wants that validation. That she hasn't been wasting her time on this guy. And then when at the end of it, you realizes, oh, this is really what he is. He is that scumbag lawyer after all. And especially when at the very end, and this is the other thing I wanted to mention as far as the drinking game, whatever, when he finds out he's going to get his license, but he's going to go put in, Brian, what does DBA stand for?
Doing business as.
Excellent, thank you. I deliberately did not Google it because I knew you were going to be on the podcast. I wanted to ask you, so I would know for the first time.
I thought it stood for Dan Bukestead, assassin, but I guess I was wrong.
You got the first two words and syllable right there. But anyway,
Amen.
Bukestead ass, right? Okay, that's fair after Scott Cobbler. Yeah. That's a fair retort.
If everybody out there's gonna get it, they're gonna get it or not get it. By the way, so before we had started watching the episode late Monday night, and I said, okay, and the final thing is gonna be it's gonna be the very fucking end of the episode. He's gonna get his license back, and it's me at that moment. It's going to be the whole thing where he's going to be referred to as Saul Goodman. That's going to be the way they're going to end the season because we've been waiting for who knows how long. So I kid you not, when he comes out and then when he says the DB, and I realized what was happening, I actually danced about the living room. I couldn't stop because I was like, pour 3 shots. I'm doing right. It was. I mean. I at the very least, I feel this is the best finale of the 4 seasons so far. And
I totally agree.
And I would say it's at the very least in the running for at least my favorite episode, if not just saying it's the best episode. It's definitely in the running for the best episode of the series.
I also think they did a really good job managing both halves of the storyline too. I mean, they couldn't squeeze Nacho in there or whatever like that, but you know what, it was fine because they did last season. I don't think Mike was in the season finale this at all. And there was plenty of awesome Chuck stuff going on there, and it was good to see that. But they really did a good job of it was just a complete, well-rounded show that wrapped up. Well, I don't know what they wrapped up stuff. I guess they did somewhat, but they really they didn't half-ass anything. Go ahead.
No, but it was so good that if the show ended, it would be a great finale, knowing where those characters end up on Breaking Bad.
Yes.
That's what I said.
Except for Kim.
And that was what I was saying earlier before we started talking about the episode. Like, if not for one character / storyline, this could have been a series finale.
Absolutely.
The Kim factor is what prevents it. because no offense to Michael Mando, who's done a fine job, and Nacho. Yes, the show could end without us getting any real resolution for him. That could happen. That's been known to happen on TV shows. The Kim thing is a bit more pressing for a lot of people, I think, because there's more of a mystery there of what the hell happened between her and Jimmy and whatever. Nacho, because of that little thing in that Breaking Bad episode, we know that he's still alive somewhere. So it's like, whatever. I'm not. I don't have like a mystery about what happens to Nacho. I mean, I love following his character, and I think I love it. But now with the Lalo thing, I don't mean to knock it, but this could have been a finale because look, we came into this series like, how do we get Mike and Jimmy to where they're going to be in Breaking Bad? And they really moved both those pieces forward on that board. Like I'm not sure how much. Quite frankly, I don't know how much further Jimmy has to go because he's going to be referred to that way. I mean, basically, he's a hairline and a couple of funny suits away from being Saul Goodman.
He's got to move from his next step will be moving from a small time lawyer to a cartel lawyer, and that's the next step.
I think that's what the next season has to be about. Is like, how does he go from? Because right now his whole idea about becoming Saul Goodman is that, well, all those people that he like, the type of the criminal element that he sold those cell phones to, the burners to, whatever, for the last several months apparently. That's like that's going to be his clientele. Those are the people he's going to be going after. But these are all. But how do you subsist on that? And he's probably going to be like an ambulance chaser type, whatever, as well. How does he get involved? That's the thing. That would be the one mystery. How does that guy become someone who becomes someone in the pecking order with Mike and Gus Fring?
Well, I'd say through Nacho. I mean, he has, kind of represented Nacho before in the past. So, something like that where, Nacho gets, pinched on some stupid small offense. They end up going to him again because, I mean, there's a history, even though Nacho didn't have much, stuff for, much whatever before. But I mean, Jimmy was involved in that stuff way, way back and, the Kettleman shit with Nacho. So I suppose that would be one, an entry point for him to get mixed up with the stuff.
I agree with that, and I think that's how it happens. And as I've said before, I still think that the person who helped get him out in Breaking Bad is the person that he gets to help Nacho and his dad get out, or at least Nacho's dad.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's nice.
Yeah, I like that.
It's too bad that actor is dead, but that could be something along those lines.
Really? I didn't know he died.
Yeah, I think he did. Oh no, he didn't die.
There.
Internet hoax.
Huh.
Jamie, don't make a mistake. You're the only one that hasn't made a mistake. So.
Oh,
give me 5 more minutes, and I will.
I owned up to it a minute later.
One thing that I'm not sure if it's something that they can make fit into the storyline or if it'll ever happen. But one thing that I would like to see, and I mean I'd have to rewatch some Breaking Bad to see if it's even possible. But I'm hoping that it just kind of goes to show like how smart and professional some of these characters are. But I would like it to get to the point where, and it's not something that we need to see these characters, but I would like, so as the show starts to wrap up or whatever, I'd like to see that. Gus and them start to become aware of Walt and Jesse's activities to the point where when Mike goes to to clean up the, Jane's dead body thing, I kind of would like somehow for that to end up being like, he's going there like on behalf of Gus, not on behalf of Saul, who called him to take care of it. I'm not sure how that would work exactly, but I think it's certainly possible that they can find a way to make that happen. And then, the reason that he's involved in the situation is, on behalf of Gus's interests. That would be. I just think it would be cool.
So are you thus advocating another major time jump for the show?
I'm just saying, like a few. I would like to see that. I would think that they eventually, towards the end of the series, would be able to get to a point where we would be able to see something like that. Where
I couldn't imagine that they would end this series without making that connection on a similar timeline. I mean, something close at least.
It isn't it?
Maybe the only way I mean, to be sure, I love the idea of it. I'm not. I would love that to be what they do, and I kind of hope they do that. I think they'd have to, but I think they'll have to do a major. But I think they'd have to do a time jump because I honestly I would be surprised pleasantly, but maybe not so much. I would be surprised if they go beyond the 5th season for the show. I don't know if they're really going to go more than another 10 episodes. They could.
I'm sure they would do a time jump. I mean, we've done 2 time jumps in the last 4 episodes at least. Because I mean, we had the time jump. Was it last episode? The week before that, I can't remember.
Well, you had the one.
But then we kind of had
months.
a time jump on this too, didn't we?
Not really.
Well, from the time that when he found out they weren't giving him his license back to now, how much time was that?
I think they said it was like a week.
Oh, really? It was only like a week?
Yeah, my impression was a week.
Jamie, you made a mistake. You were almost there, almost 100%.
I didn't make a mistake because I asked a question.
Boom.
Yeah.
I didn't state a fact.
Objection overruled, Mr. Bustad. Move along.
Oh, look, Brian sucking up to the one. What a shocker. Anyway, so season overall, what do we think of this one?
Favorite one?
Yeah, I agree.
You know, I was on board for the whole season, and I think they really wrapped it up well. And like I said before, I think it'll play really well if you watch 10 episodes in a row and knock it out like that. I think it might play a little bit better. But I don't know if I can rate it. I'm not quite ready to rate it against the other seasons yet, but I definitely don't have very many complaints about anything that they did this season. And I think one thing too. I mean, I didn't really until I listened to the new Better Call Saul Insider podcast for this episode. I listened to that this morning, and I really wasn't aware of how little Vince Gilligan was involved in the show. I mean, I'd heard some stuff that he was working on other stuff, and he wasn't doing that much. But until this episode, I didn't really realize that he really wasn't around for that much of it. And the fact that I didn't realize that Vince Gilligan was basically checked out for the whole season is really a testament to how well Peter Gould did a good job pretty much doing it, and how awesome the production team is doing it, where you can lose, not completely lose, but basically lose such an element like that without really the show I would say skipping that much of a beat. I know some people have issues with the season pacing, whatever, filler, blah blah blah, but I didn't necessarily have that myself. But I would I pay attention to this kind of stuff and the stuff they're doing with the cameras and the lighting and the music and all that shit when I'm watching the show. But but until today, I didn't realize that Gilligan just wasn't there that much.
And along those lines, I want to do Dan's Dork Corner to talk about the 2 things I thought stood out that we didn't get to because they weren't really big. But I thought the 2 amazing things. I love the editing when they did the interviews with all the kids.
Yes, I had that in my notes. Thank you.
They just would start to talk and they'd cut to the next one. I thought that was really cool. And I love the shot from inside the ATM showing what happened when the stuff went in it. Just great, vision and artistic design and editing. I thought the technical excellence of this episode was amazing.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention that it was nice to see the makeup girl working at his fake memorial thing for Chuck too.
Thank you.
That was
they were all 3 of them were there. Makeup girl, camera guy, and I don't know, Mike Boy, whatever it is.
Oh, yeah. I didn't see the other 2, so that's cool. So
spreading the word on who donated the money.
They were filming. Yeah. They were filming Howard when Howard was getting filmed there. It was the 2 of them, and I saw like, oh my god, look who was there! And that's when I realized, the scam is still on. There we go.
And I watched this episode live, and I just gotta say I really liked the Toby Huss Audi commercial. I think yeah,
Jesus.
it's just he really just we liked him a lot on Halt and Catch Fire, and it was just cool seeing him it was a pretty badass commercial, and definitely I'd say a better commercial to have during Better Call Saul than the variety of farmers only dating commercials we've seen sprinkled throughout the season. Which I can't imagine there's a lot of farmers rocking up the old Saul thing, but what do I know? Well, trust me, I know because I live surrounded by all this fucking shit in the sticks here. But yeah, just nice. I like Toby Huss. He's a good guy, and I definitely he pulled it off well. So Scott, what did you think?
There's commercials for a dating site for farmers?
Yeah, it's called
But
Farmers
you've never
Only.
seen these?
Yeah, it's on during. There's been at least 3 or 4 this season. It's just people with cowboy hats driving tractors and
My 8-year-old walks around and sings the theme song.
Is it possible that maybe it's a local market thing and maybe I don't see that here?
Yeah, I'm thinking that maybe
I don't know
your
how
neck of the woods doesn't have a big.
Yeah, there's not a lot of farmers in New York City, so I don't know if that would be.
I'm not sure
show
that it's the right place to be marketing to.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it's AMC, so I'm not sure how that works exactly with the a cable thing versus a network. But farmers and Christians dating each other. Scott, what did you think of the season?
Well, it seems like some of my thoughts might be relegated to blah 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 based on what you said. I would say that the last several episodes really changed my mind about the season. So, again, as I said too many times already, I liked the first half of the season, but I had a specific concern about it. They fixed that concern in the second half of the season.
Yeah, and you always thought that they were going to, and you said that you're confident they were going to tie all together. But...
Yeah, I was just getting. I was like, okay, I was like, the longer this goes on, the more concerned. Because I was like, okay, can we need to get to something. I didn't mean to phrase it as a pacing thing because I love the pace of the show.
No, I'm not just referring to you.
I know you're not. I know you're
general.
not. I know you're not. But sticking a knife in me.
So did it outpace? You expected them to fix it, but the way they fixed it, did it exceed your expectations?
I was happier with the finale than I thought I'd be, which is weird because I was already expecting it to be a great finale. I really, really, really loved this finale. I felt it really delivered on both an emotional and a storytelling level for both Mike's storyline and Jimmy's storyline, and you couldn't have given and the way both those things ended, and I mean as far as Mike having to execute Werner, not what happens with Gus and Gale in the Superlab later. The final notes with each of those two characters, I thought were just perfect. I mean, that gorgeous shot, which is something we've seen before cinematography-wise on both this show and the previous one, but doing the long shot of him shooting Werner was also another beautifully composed shot.
Yes.
Love the way that looked.
Yes, it was.
Again, it's one of the only shows I can think of, including pay cable shows, whatever, that always achieves a purely cinematic look to it. And that's just one of many shots we've seen over the course of history of the show that look that way. And I'm sorry, you couldn't. There could be no better ending with Jimmy and him actually going to get his name changed. And he doesn't say it's all good. He's like, it's all good, but you know it's what he's doing. And I was like, oh my God. I feel like they wrote that like 3 years ago. We're just going to wait till we can finally get to this scene. We're finally going to get here. And there it was. And I was just hooting and hollering, even though at the same time it was like, oh, you didn't want him to be Saul Goodman, but I think that train left the station a while ago. Certainly throughout this season, and maybe to a certain extent part of last season too. Once Jimmy had been revealed to be not as great a guy as we had wanted him to be, I was like, all right, then let's get to Saul then. And the way it ended was really good for me. So the second half of the season really pushes me to say this was my favorite, but it's tough because I'd like, you know what? Can I take like the first half of last season and the second half of this season and just make my own super season, and that would be like my favorite? Because the stuff with Chuck Alt leading up to that hearing was I love that stuff, and the second half of this season. It's my favorite half season. But I love the show no matter what. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and going on what you're saying about how good the finale was. I mean, it managed to do. I mean, if you just list off all the like specific, story things that it was able to do. I mean, it moved forward the Mike thing. It kind of resolved this, the Super Lab thing. It did the relationship fuckery with Kim and Jimmy. It developed next season's, presumably next season's villain very effectively. I mean, it moved Jimmy, from Jimmy to pretty much Saul. I mean, it just did so many things so effectively. And, it was a longer episode than usual, so they had a little bit more time to do it. But they got a lot of stuff done. There was a lot of moving parts, and they managed to wrap up a lot of stuff and set up a lot of other stuff. And it's, very well done.
It was so dense that Peter Gould posted like the storyboard, I think, on Twitter. And it's just amazing all the pieces that they put in this episode. And it was really quite the feat.
I was happy when I heard that they cut out there was a montage with Katie Seagal singing towards the end. I'm sorry.
Push it to an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, when you see a show that runs that long, that's the first thing I think of. I was like, did they get Kurt Sutter on the phone? But yeah, it was really something. Anything else? Like 5 minutes later, we're going to think of a bunch of things we didn't say. But
yep.
Probably.
Such is
I think we've had a great conversation. I'll just say that I'm really looking forward to more Lalo. Like, I want to see where that goes. Like, whoever the actor is, Tony Randall, apparently.
Yes, exactly.
That whoever that actor is.
Can we call him the late Tony Randall?
The late Tony Randall.
Yes.
But in the limited time he's been on the show, like, he just lights up the screen and does a delightful combination of scary but sort of playful that I really want to see where that goes.
Well, and he's such an amazing contrast to the likes of Gus and Mike.
Yes.
So that makes it extra fun. It's almost like if it ends up between like almost like a Mike versus him. It's almost like Batman versus one of his versus the Joker or something. Just the sheer loopiness of it. It'd be a lot of fun. Dan?
Yeah, I'd like to see some, a scene with Lalo and the cousins, just so you can see some kind of juxtaposition with them together, because they're definitely not. I guess they're all each other's cousins, but it would just be a fun scene to see, I think.
So, question: they said at one point, season or two ago. So, is Tuco still in prison at this point? Is that what's happened to him?
Yeah, Tuco's in prison until relatively quickly before. He's in prison pretty much up until around the beginning of Breaking Bad.
Okay.
So at some point
you can't get him.
Yeah, so at some right. Yeah, so at some point, Crazy 8 becomes a DA informant. At some point, Crazy 8 seems to have some kind of autonomy because presumably Nacho and Lalo are gone. Mm-hmm. And so Crazy 8 seems to be kind of doing his own thing at that time.
Right.
And then Skinny Pete, whoever was in jail with Tuco, has been stuck there for a while for some point too. So he'll be out of the picture for a while.
That led me to a thought, and I swear this will be the last thing I say. Sorry,
I don't believe that at all. Go on.
I know, but it did lead me to think, with the way Lalo has progressed and where Breaking Bad began, it made me wonder if we'll see Dean Norris, if Hank Schrader and the DEA might creep into this show in the near future.
Or at least Gomez.
Yeah, he might actually end up being more likely. I think we've been. God, I don't know how long we've been saying it for. I mean, of the major Breaking Bad people, not including Gus Fring, we thought Schrader was the most. He was the one that you could most easily explain showing up. because of what his job was. So yeah, of course he can show up.
I think I would prefer Gomez to just because it would feel like not the show isn't trying quite as hard. It totally makes sense for Hank to be in there. However, I think it would feel less showy to me if it was Gomez.
Sure.
Gomez and his boss, whoever.
You can see Lalo bringing a level of chaos and violence that would then attract the attention of the DEA, like for things to really ramp up.
Yeah, and I think it'd be nice if we saw, Tortuga again. Might be kind of cool too. I mean, there's a variety of crime adjacent characters that could theoretically show up, and I suppose if whatever Danny Trejo is willing to be on the Flash, I'm sure he's willing to come back for an episode of Better Call Saul.
Hey, the season premiere of Flash was really surprisingly good. So
yeah.
I was like, wow.
I'm not saying it's a bad show, but I'd say it's definitely not quite the prestige show. So if he's cool enough to do whatever, I'm sure he's cool enough to do this too. If there's a need to have that character.
Yeah. I think there's a whole lot of crappy stuff on Danny Trejo's fucking resume. I wouldn't worry about that. You actually picked something which is probably on the upper tier of some of the shit he's done over the years. Man, but yeah, that would be cool if he showed up. But there's any I still want Wendy the meth head to show up, so that's what I'm still waiting for.
At an
I know that it's not really something that anybody really cares about except for myself, but my one hope for the next season is I really want to see Howard lose his shit. I want to see him just totally go off the handle at somebody. He's always way too calm. Even when he's seeing a therapist twice a week, he's still so calm and so cool and collected. And I want to see that actor push the limits of just losing his shit. That will be the highlight of the season. No matter what else happens, that'll be the highlight for me.
Just so you know, there is an episode of Longmire where that actor loses his shit, so keep that in mind. If I try to get you to watch it, it is something that happens.
Okay, I will look forward to that. I want to see it as Howard.
Yeah, there's also some Ted Beneke shenanigans too on Longmire, so remember that.
There's an episode
really pushing that Longmire.
There's an episode of Lucifer where that guy kind of goes after it, wants to kill the devil throughout the whole episode, so he's kind of psychotic and insane. So you can watch that one too if you really want to see Patrick Bateman.
Yeah. They're both filmed in northern New Mexico, so that kind of thing's pretty easily done. But I got to get my Longmire plug.
Okay, so
who growled? Who did that?
I think he was purring, but I'm not sure.
I was snoring.
Well, I rank it higher than Justified, so watch it and then make a decision. But I do.
I saw several episodes when I was stuck with someone at my house for a weekend, so I've seen it. I thought it was fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't know. And I think other show. I'm just talking about something else, which I think is better than Justified. What was the show we were talking about? That's better than Justified. Was it Ozark?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people are willing to give it a lot of respect. Some people aren't quite ready to put it at the top tier, but.
Oh my gosh, I think we just went full circle on that. Coincidentally, we just found out that Ozark got renewed for a third season, so
Yay.
Good.
Pretty
good.
Awesome.
Pretty good for a B-level show there. Nice work you've done.
Yeah, that's new. That's news to me because I didn't know that until just now. So
there you go.
Great.
It's like neck and neck with the Flash. All right, since we have nothing else to say, that's all we're going to say for this season of Better Call Saul. If you enjoyed this podcast, chances are you would enjoy hanging out on our Facebook page as well as the Serious TV Drama Podcast page. Like the page and join the conversation about Better Call Saul and lesser tier shows like Ozark or The Flash. You can also find us on iTunes. Type in Serious TV Drama Podcast. You can subscribe to our feed as well as rate and review us there. Just don't review us based on the lulls. And only review us based on the LOLs. And you can also find us on Google and a million other places. And you can follow us on Twitter. Our handle there is @STVD Podcast. That's STVD as in Serious TV Drama And that's it. So we wrapped up a season. Pretty good one, I would say, as we were just saying. Podcasting. You got guests. You kind of rescued the podcast, so thank you so much for your participation for the last. How long? It's been like the last half season you guys have been popping on. Is that how long you guys have been doing this thing?
No, most of the season. But
Most of the season.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Jamie. Yep.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging out with me in my garage. It's been nice, and I appreciate it.
Do you have the ignition on and stuff?
No vehicles, just no children.
Do you possibly have a highly perverted toilet marketed to children in your garage?
No, we're in the clear.
Oh, see, now I got to go back to that season. That's a great season just because of that.
Oh, Chandler, good job taking your shit, Chandler. That's Daddy's big boy.
Oh my god. I think I accidentally stepped on you thanking Brian there, so you can go back to that if you like.
I was just trying to grudgingly thank Brian after pretending to not thank him. So there's my description of how I tried not to thank Brian, but was really going to while Brian's listening. So thanks.
Well, I've enjoyed it greatly. I love talking about the show. I love talking about it with you guys, and it's really cool that I finally got to hear Jamie's voice and join a podcast with her. So thanks for having me.
Yay!
Oh, look at that, Mr. Sweetness. I wanted to also thank you. You were doing really well on your almost season-long audition to take over. Yeah, but then your level of disagreement at the end there kind of blew it for you there. So no confirmation. So.
Well, unlike Kim, I see you for who you are, Scott, and I'm calling you on your bullshit. So there you go.
Ooh. Huh. That's my new ringtone. You saying that?
I thought you were saying your new ringtone is ooh. And I was like, what the hell is wrong with you? Ooh. Oh boy, have we passed 2? Oh, we did pass it. All right. Alrighty then. So after 2 hours plus, I will put a bow on this and start the ring of good nights. Good night, Brian. Good night, Jamie. Good night, Dan. And good night, everybody out there.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Good night, Chandler.